Hey everybody, Dutchsinse here. 1:36 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, March 20th, 2014. And we're looking at Earthquake 3D here, which is a USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. And currently we're looking at 2.5 and greater in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Alaska, and 4.0 and greater internationally. And this is the last 7 days. Now I'm going to draw your attention first in this earthquake update to the United States. Then we'll get into the international areas on areas that I would watch for the next week or so for possible movement. And some of this might be a little bit larger than normal based upon the activity that's been occurring internationally. The displacement that's been happening in the West Pacific is now spilling over to the United States. Rather unorthodox belief here, but it is occurring. And I'm going to get into that now. So when you look at the United States, when you see this activity that's been occurring off the West Coast, we had the 7.0 last week, followed by the 4.4 that struck down here in Los Angeles that sent the news anchors diving under their desks. No one, hardly anyone, acknowledged the 7.0 that occurred off the northwest coast, followed by multiple 4 and 5.0 earthquakes slightly southeast from the original earthquake epicenter. Now this is a sign of greater movement that's occurring. You can also see these earthquakes here that go right down the edge of the North American plate. And I'm going to show you a diagram in just a moment. This is on my blog here. I'll put a link down below. I posted this last week after the 7.0 struck in California to show the movement that was occurring along the North American plate and areas that I would currently watch for movement. Those areas were struck, by the way, the areas that we were currently watching. Now we're watching again for further movement based upon this update that I'm doing now. Here's the North American Craton, and this is just a rough diagram. You can find this in many geology books or similar. And the edge extends from the Pacific Northwest all the way down here to the south and then back up to the northeast. Now the coastal plain extends all the way down through Florida, of course, and the deformed edge extends from Idaho south through Texas and Mexico and then back up the east coast. The earthquakes that we're seeing are occurring in between the deformed edge and the natural edge, the unsubducted edge. And I'll show that to you now. You can trace the earthquakes from the Pacific Northwest right along the edge of the Craton, and in the middle of the Craton, they are fracking. And they're starting to frack right up the east coast along the edge here. And here's the shale plays. This is from the U.S. government. President Obama showed this diagram at the State of the Union speech last year. And these are the shale plays where they're fracking for natural gas. Ironically, the same areas are experiencing earthquake activity. The 2.7 in Colorado here, fracking operation. Also, fracking operations here at Oklahoma, confirmed from the USGS. Okay, and we can verify that the fracking operation not only in Oklahoma is causing earthquakes, but this 2.7 here at the border of New Mexico and Colorado is also at a fracking operation that the USGS has not acknowledged yet is causing earthquakes. And this is the fracking operation that produced a 5.0 in 2011 going into 2012. So let's get the coordinates on this. And the way you do this is you just pull the coordinates from the USGS and we input them into Google Earth, and it'll take us right to the area where it says the earthquake epicenter is. And I've done this multiple times, marked them over and over and over again, the different frac wells and different oil wells associated with earthquake activity. And you can see I've already marked all these from a previous earthquake, 3.9, September 8th, 2013. Now we've got a 2.7, and look at the size of the operation, by the way. Each one of these square pads, and let me zoom in, each one of these is an oil well. And you can see the pump operation. Several of them are fracking operations as well. Now that's what they're doing here. They're not really getting too much oil out of these. They are now injecting water, and this just goes on and on. I really got tired of marking them. There were so many. You can see they just go off in all the different directions. And we can zoom in again just to prove each one does have a wellhead. Okay, here, oh, wow, okay, there's even people here working, it looks like. Okay, and you can see each one a pump and even like a little frac pond. Sometimes they'll have the pond outside exposed, and they use that for excess runoff of chemicals. They'll pull that water and they'll use it as well. So this huge operation here is causing earthquakes. It's obvious. You can see the earthquake activity occurring and the huge operation that extends for multiple miles in multiple directions. That's just here in Colorado. Now let's go back over here and we can look up Oklahoma. Again, we can pull any one of these coordinates. Let's take the largest one over the last 7 days. Let's find it here. It looks like the largest one is a 3.7. And we'll do the same thing. Pull the coordinates, USGS, and put them in on Google Earth. Now, USGS has already confirmed the operations in Oklahoma, so we don't really have to debate this. This is something they've had on their website now for the past several months, that the fracking operations in Oklahoma are indeed the cause of earthquake activity. Right across the street. Right across the street. Nearest well. And there's several. I mean, you don't just have to look very hard. You can see another couple are here. And what we do normally, I don't have the time to do that in this video now, is mark those. So when you come back, you can make note of the previous earthquake activity that's occurred there. And so here we have a 3.7 that's occurred right alongside several others, and that's definitely fracking induced. So why is this occurring? Why are there earthquakes occurring at fracking operations here to the south and at more natural places like Yellowstone and further up the western edge of the North American plate, and now a 2.6 along the New Madrid? I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri. This is concerning to me because this is not a fracking operation. This is actual pressure transfer occurring along the edge of the plate, now showing down here to the south as well as a surface quake. This would be surface deformation that's occurring along the coastal plain, which you can see in this diagram here, how it extends out right to the ocean. This is all buckling due to the pressure transfer that's occurring coming from the Pacific Northwest. It's obvious. You can see which way it's going. We can take these back down now over the last 7 days. Watch the progression. So if you can imagine, these kick off first, then we see these follow to the east. In other words, the pressure is transferring from here down here to the southeast, and we can expect now pressure to be building along the northeast portion of the Craton itself. Again, back to the map here. Pressure coming from this direction, from the west, this way, instead of from the mid-Atlantic rise that they teach here. The mid-Atlantic ridge spreads and puts on pressure from the east to the west. However, currently, in the West Pacific, we have a huge amount of movement. Now, these earthquakes that are occurring, the high earthquakes off the globe, that indicates depth. So you can see several of these are volcanic related. So at Vanuatu, going west through Indonesia, several of the deep earthquakes are at volcanoes directly. Now, let's go ahead and look at the 5.0 and greater first internationally to make any sense of this, to see the amount of movement that's actually occurred. Okay, so West Pacific, really showing a lot of movement, extending all the way here from Papua New Guinea, west through Sumatra, north to Japan, where the 6.3 occurred, reported as heavy movement in South Japan, and then a few 5.0s extending across the northeast edge of the Pacific Plate. Now, look at South America, the area that we were expecting, specifically named Chile as the area to watch. Chile got the 7.0 that they were expecting, multiple 6.0s now, and 5.0 aftershocks. And this is again just 5.0 and greater. This is showing us cluster points that we need to watch and silent points that we need to watch. Both need to be watched. Cluster points for large-scale movement near term. And it almost points to the direction where you need to watch. And this area right here in the center would be anywhere from, let's say, Taiwan, south through North Sumatra. And I hate to give that kind of watch because that area already had the large tsunami several years ago, which killed so many people. This area is prone. You can see it. 5.0 activity wrapping the entire area, and a silent area that's normally prone for large-scale movement in the middle. Extending west through Europe, let's take this down one notch so you can see the 4.0s. You can see the progression. First of all, you can see the flurry of activity occurring in the West Pacific. Secondly, it spills right over to Europe, terminating here in South Europe. This means the areas that we saw 7.0 movement that would be Turkey, also extending east to Iran, would need to watch. Also, Western China, the other 7.0 that happened several weeks ago during the Olympics, didn't get much reporting on because of what was going on with the cold Arctic blast happening in the US. No one reported on the large earthquake in China. So that's a cluster spot. You can see it right here, stacked. Also, watch southern Greece. That would be an area where we could see possible movement in the near term. Also, as we see smaller earthquakes, which are not on the map here, we also need to watch right here along the English Channel. I know it's such a small area to watch, but we're going to need to watch for that smaller movement further to the west in Europe and extending around the Ring of Fire. There's these cluster spots again, which you can see with the 5.0s and greater, are the areas to watch. So it kind of narrows down the area that you need to watch. In the US, along the edge of the Craton, we need to be aware. Along the East Coast, New Madrid, not out of the question. However, it wouldn't be as large as you might expect. It would be in that moderate range like we saw with the Virginia earthquake in 2011 that damaged the Washington Monument. We saw this kind of activity building up beforehand, before that occurred. It's due, it's silent now, we need to watch that area. Southern California, another area that we do need to watch, and the area specifically I would be watching would be at the Salton Sea, south to Baja. So let's hope that if any sizable movement were to occur, we haven't seen any activity in this region, large activity, in a fairly long time. We saw the 6.0 strike here in southern Mexico almost a week and a half ago. However, that's not the sizable activity that we would expect with this amount of movement occurring around the rest of the Ring of Fire. And look, it's been rather silent there as well lately. Okay? Guys, always have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared just in case. If you live in an earthquake-prone area, the time to prepare is now. So it's not a big deal, but just have that plan ready and be prepared. If you live in an area where you wouldn't normally expect earthquakes, let's say the Midwest or East Coast, you may want to review the idea of having an earthquake plan. You might want to develop one. Just keep it in the back of your mind just in case. But in prone areas, it's wise to have it ready to go. Okay, guys? Much love. Be safe. And I'll put some links down below for earthquake monitoring so you guys can stay up to date on current earthquake situations around the world. That'll be down below the video. Cheers.